It was good. Which is probably the perfect lead in here for you being a branding expert. So
Hmm.
I want to begin our journey. First and foremost, thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me and
Yeah,
welcoming me.
you bet. So let's begin our journey with something that I know we're all getting fatigued with, which is COVID. But it was such a momentous time
Hmm.
in so many different polarizing ways. How did you
Hmm.
ultimately survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you approach things now?
Hmm. Are we going to be recording this or just
I,
still
I'm
shoot?
I'm recording now. Yeah, I tend to jump in. I come from jazz, so if you want, we can start at the top. Like I just to make sure
No,
you're
that's
ready.
fine.
Okay.
So COVID, because it's been what, 4+ years now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, time flies. Because some ways it feels like it was yesterday, but
Uh-huh.
I have always had a remote company. So I launched my business 15 years ago, and the team has always been remote. We're all based around the US. So honestly, for us at that point, 2020 became our best revenue year because so many people were taking their businesses that were either brick and mortar or more in person, right? Like think of a therapist, for example, taking them online and moving a lot of their content online. So it was a great year for us. We didn't skip a beat because we had a lot of really good business, and because we were already set up to work the way we were, where a lot of companies were scrambling, right, to create these remote work environments and how to create accountability and how to execute, how to put processes and systems in place when they were no longer in person. We had already been doing that for 10 years, you know?
Yeah.
How about you? Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say, how about you?
Well, I work I'm an IT technician for a large
Yeah,
school district, so we were essential and we had to clean everything. That was our time
yeah.
to start really sanitizing, but we had to get everything ready for remote. And I have kids. I have a 19-year-old and a
Hmm.
stepdaughter.
Hmm.
So at that point I had to decide really what I wanted to do, and I ramped up my interviews. So I would interview jazz musicians all over the world and put them on speaker and the kids would listen to them. And jazz
Hmm.
musicians are wonderful human beings,
Yeah.
very strong, very positive people. So during that
Hmm.
time period, they were listening to all these different voices from around the world and getting very, like there was one guy to this day that my stepdaughter still talks about. He was a
Really?
very, very established jazz musician in New York City. His name is Theo Hill. And
Okay.
he decided to leave New York and went to Costa Rica. And while we're on the call with him, he said he turned into a surfer and all this stuff. We could hear macaws in the background. We heard the
Wow.
surf in the background. She still talks about it to this day. So there was all these moments that
Yeah.
I decided that life had a monopoly on us. We could
Yes.
either wallow in the fact that the bread got a little wet, or we could find a way to get a bagel that was more impenetrable or something. But it
Yeah.
was just, you had to maneuver and find a way.
Yeah. No, I totally can relate to that. And I think everybody had to kind of dig deep, right? I mean, we all had a lot more alone time. I think we were all, at least I was, in my family, I have a 17 and 19-year-old girls now, so
Yeah.
they were 4 years younger then. And my husband too started working from home, so there was a little maneuvering on that. I actually got a workspace outside of the house. But I think it caused us all to just go deep and evaluate friendships and, right, social
Yep.
circles and how we were spending our time and what we felt was really fulfilling to us and what were we really missing. I think it gave us an opportunity to do that too. So on a personal level, it felt like a cleansing. There was one family we actually started having weekly dinners with. We were just switching houses every single week for about however long. And that was also just a saving grace because it was so, it was like something we looked forward to. And it was just like we were in it together,
Yeah.
besides the work stuff.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you
Yeah.
do on a daily basis.
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. And one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your
Yeah.
answer?
Yeah. Well, our team builds websites. That is the most common thing that we do in terms of an output. But we always start our projects with a real deep dive into the brand strategy. And when I talk about branding, it's not about just logos and colors and fonts. That's part of it. That's kind of the external. So to the third grader listening, it's like the clothing on the human, right? Like how they dress themselves. But when you're dressing someone, there's a body, there's a soul, there's an essence, there's a reputation, there's a personality that somebody has. So we take that deep dive into those aspects of the brand. And whether it's a personal brand or a business brand, the work is the same. We have to get to the heart of what it is that we're projecting out there, right? And the projection often comes the website because we want to create a piece of real estate on the internet for someone that somebody owns, just like a house. And the next part of what we do is we help that business or individual who's offering a service, let's say, um, attract attention and market themselves so they can grow their businesses. And we do that through organic content, writing blogs, writing newsletters, any social media that's organic. Because at that point when we've launched their website, we know that business so well that we can almost like channel them, right? Because we've written their content, we've done their design, we've done their development, everything. So we help then grow the brands in various ways. So there's the ways I just mentioned, but we also help people who are interested in creating podcasts, right? Because that, you and I know this world, it's all about giving somebody voice and a platform and growing their platform and community and spreading what it is that's important to them from an informational standpoint. And that's also a big part of building a brand and finding ways that come naturally and resonate with an individual, to market themselves. And in our world, we want to send all that attention back to the website. So if you think of a wheel, the website is the hub in the middle, and all those things, the content marketing pieces, the podcast, whatever it is, those marketing tactics are the spokes on the wheel. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream growing up?
Third grade. Um, Honestly, I don't remember third grade, but I will tell you that I was an English major in undergrad, also studied communications. I wanted to be a journalist, like an investigative journalist that traveled the world and wanted to bring truth, old school journalism, not like today's journalism. Um, and and I did that for a little while. I worked at the Wall Street Journal at one point for 3 years, which I loved. But I also wanted to become a dean of students. So as I went through college, I became very close to my dean of students because I was the editor of the campus news and it was a real serious publication. And I got to know him really well and I would go to him for career advice. And I was a little bit lost in college, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I would kept tapping into him. And then I thought, I want to be him because I want to help students
Yeah.
figure this out. This
Yeah.
what am I going to do with my life thing. So I actually got a master's degree in higher education administration and worked at New York University for a little while in another college on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Loved that, loved connecting with students. I love that age group, especially, like 16 till about early 20s when people
Yeah.
are really soul searching and it really puts them on the path for the rest of their life. And then I felt like those jobs were very rote. And I'm a person who's extremely curious and I need to be doing different things to stay engaged and interested. So, long story short, I went to work at the United Nations and I worked in the Economic and Social Development Department because that's where education fit in, right? That was my background. But I was the youngest person in my department, and this, I'll date myself a little bit. This is when the internet was coming to be.
Uh-huh.
And because I have a strong writing background, I was the young person asked to like, can you create a newsletter?
Uh-huh.
Oh, the UN's creating their first website. We have to
Yep.
send a delegate from our department to that team. Can that be you? So I started morphing more into a marketing role and was there for 3 years. And that was right before the Wall Street Journal. So I just had this like long winding path that led me to, even into government. I worked for the mayor of Boston for a while, helping bridge the digital divide in the school districts. I worked in internet consulting, doing business strategy. So I have this really varied background, but it's
Absolutely.
prepared me well for what I do today.
It's interesting because the 90s really was kind of a way of grandfathering you into things. You would have the
Hmm.
owner and because they all wanted to save money. Hey, can you do this? You're already doing this. Why don't you, you know what I'm saying? Because I remember
Yeah.
those days too. I was doing desktop publishing for a home health agency at a consulting firm, and they were like,
Okay.
"Can you design? Can you do the internet? Can you do
Yeah.
this?" And like, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Because now in IT, it's like it's all about certifications, all these high
Okay.
level things, all these very formal things. But back in the 90s, it was like, "What do you got? Here you go. Have at it."
Right. And you
Come-
figured it out, right?
that-
Which
that-
is,
That's it. It was like Apollo 13. Look, everybody, it was like when he walked in and dumped that box out. We have to get these guys home. How are we going to do it? And you just
yeah.
put it together. You figured it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I gotta say, years ago, I don't know how this happened. Maybe when I used to fly a lot, I got frequent flyer miles,
Hmm.
so I could get subscriptions to things. And I got a
Hmm.
subscription to the Wall Street Journal, and I always thought it was kind of this stuffy, like
Hmm.
financial Latin thing. I had so much fun in that 6 months. It is such good writing, so much
Yeah.
good content. I had no idea, and
Yeah.
I loved it. Every morning I got it, I totally loved it.
Yeah. No, that is so true. And I'm actually like not a real financial person by nature. Like
Yeah,
numbers are not my thing. But I felt the same way having worked on the inside there. Just a lot of super talented people and
yeah.
amazing writing and the quality of the output I thought was honestly like the best publication out there because it went through so many checks and balances too, you know.
Yeah. So I'm curious in this world where we look at all these big conglomerates,
Hmm.
Google's very clean with
Hmm.
what they do with their things. Apple kind of is in a different kind of hip way. And then you have Amazon that's the same thing that it's been since they sold books.
Hmm.
But in the realm of branding and
Hmm.
what we see on a regular basis, what company do you admire for the way they branded, the way they treat their people, and the product they deliver?
That's such a good question. Um, there's a lot of companies that I really admire, some smaller and some bigger. The one that's coming to mind right now is called Beauty Pie, and that
Okay.
was started by a woman named Marcia Kilgore, who has a lot of success under her belt. I think this is like her fourth pretty decent sized company. She started a brand called Fit Flops, and she started some other brands as well that she's grown significantly. But what I love is like the personality that they put into their creative. They're I like companies that really innovate on an industry, and she has done that in the beauty industry. She's created a membership model. So if you buy in, pay for a membership, which is like $50 a year or something around there, you can get incredible high quality makeup products at a really, really deep discount. And if you choose not to be a member, you have the regular price point, which is like what you would pay in a department store, let's say, for that quality product. But what she does is like she sources the best products. So she'll go to like this obscure village in France to get blush made, and this um town in Italy that's known for the quality of their eyeliner, let's say, or whatever it is, and a lot of skin products. And what I love is like the high quality, but at the cheaper price point. And again, she doesn't have a brick and mortar, so her overhead significantly less,
Yeah.
right? And she can then offer the savings to the consumer. So I really like brands, like I said, that are innovative and that try to disrupt an industry and really want to serve their customer in a way that is not normally being done, right? And
Yeah.
again, I don't know what the work environment is in internally, culture-wise, but they've been around for a while, and my sense is it's pretty positive.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for the work that you've done?
Um, you are asking very good questions. I would say Richard Branson, I've always admired. Again, very innovative, disruptive guy, like doing things his way. No matter how big his brands have gotten, you still feel his personality in them, right? Like they're a little risque, but they're not necessarily like crazy types of companies, except maybe his space one. Not that that's crazy, but again, super innovative. And he just seems to love life,
Yeah.
like he enjoys his life. It's not just about work, work, work. Seems to have a good family life, a good balance of play and but you can tell he's passionate about the work too, right?
Yeah.
So I really admire those qualities in him, and he also is very philanthropic. But another person who I find extremely inspiring is Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're familiar with
Oh
his
yeah.
work.
Uh-huh.
Again, like a personal story that shows incredible resilience, and curiosity and a determination to just find an alternate way to have healed himself and not just listening to what doctors were telling him. I'm a big fan of just critical thinking and believing through faith. I think that comes from faith, actually,
Yeah.
faith in God,
Yeah.
believing that there is another way and then finding it and leaning on God to help you find that solution. I think we're all limitless if we want to tap into that part of us
Yeah.
that can help us find the solution to whatever problem that we're dealing with. So, for those reasons, I find Dispenza doing groundbreaking work, and I feel like he's coming from a really good place of, leaning on God to guide his actions as well.
So I got very specific questions about prior clients that you had, and I have to know,
Okay.
was the president of the Cartoon Network a little quirky or funny or something that you would expect that guy or person would be?
It's funny. I actually just interviewed my podcast the other day, which will air in a month or so. He is a wonderful guy, extremely warm. What you see is what you get with him. No more quirky than, any of us, right?
Yeah.
Like we all have our quirks, but just extremely transparent. Has loved his journey and all his work. Every place he's worked, he's gone there at a critical point in time where they were on a real growth trajectory. So even though these weren't true startups that he's worked for, he has been there at a stage where he's really helped them scale and grow. And again, like just likes to have fun, like
Yeah.
loves life. He bought Beale's Lobster Pier in Maine some years back when a friend recommended it to him. He'd never worked in the hospitality industry. He thought it was a crazy idea at first, but then when he and his friend partnered on it, it's like you can tell it's like one of the things he loves most in his portfolio.
Yeah. So speaking of portfolio and history,
Hmm.
of all of the projects that you've been on in your life, and
Hmm.
you have to really
Hmm.
put things out. People see what you do in a different
Hmm.
way than other people. What was one of the projects where you felt like you grew the most? Maybe it was excruciating, but you got to the end, and it's something that's indelibly a part of your DNA and your design and branding right now.
Hmm. For a client or for ourselves?
Probably either or.
Well, I'll tell you the one that was the hardest lessons. It's a company I launched about 8 or 9 years ago called My Path 101, and that was the blend of my higher ed with my personal branding. So created a membership site for high school and college kids to help them figure out who they really are, right? All the content that we give kids as they're coming upon high school graduation is an assessment, and they fill out multiple choice, and then they get back in return like you could be a teacher, you could be this, or you could be that, but we're not asking kids who they are. We're not asking them what their values are, their mission, their vision. I can go down a rabbit hole here, but I won't. So, what I learned when I was working in personal branding all those years with adults is if they were dissatisfied with their career, it usually was from like a decision made in college, right? What to major in and then what to do next. So I thought if I could create something to help these young people better understand their own identity, they will not make, hopefully, some of the mistakes that some of us adults have made along our path, right? So launch this membership site, put about 100K into it over the span of a year. I had some business partners. My kids were really little at the time, so they were napping. So I was literally burning the candle at both ends, by day, brandiD, evenings, editing content, this, that, writing. And and I did not realize how hard it would be to market a membership site when I was completely dialed into marketing services, right? So it's basically marketing a product versus marketing services. We didn't have a mailing list. I mean, we did create some partnerships with some universities like University of Pittsburgh and Point Park University and a local high school. So we did some betas and this and that. And then I was trying to grow both companies. And after some years of that, and my kids were getting older,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a different, my kids have always been number one priority to me. I wanted to be the mom at the different events and be home for them as much as possible. So I basically just took the paywall off of my Path 101 and redid it actually 2 years ago, really scaled it down because my daughter, that's now 19, was a high school senior. And I was seeing the same struggle of why I created the darn thing to begin with. So
Yeah.
completely revamped it. And that's kind of my passion project. I got to get it out there. But
Yeah.
the lessons, burned a lot of money, definitely helped me grow. I would never just be all into something at the very, very beginning like that without testing the market first. That was a big lesson. And realizing how to you got to grease the wheels before you launch something like that and attract the right audience, right? So that when you're ready to sell, there's something people to sell to.
Absolutely. So, of all of these things that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Building brandiD,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So I got to know, going back to youth, talking
Hmm.
about this matrix of letting the youth find out where they're at. If you have a dream tonight, you run
Hmm.
into the 18-year-old version of you, you could
Hmm.
give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What
Hmm.
advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I would say take time to build your relationship with God because that will serve you in every challenge that you face. And it will also be where you need to turn to give thanks. It's like stay humble, right?
Yeah.
Because the tide can always, always change, and to always be mindful of people around you and the people you're allowing in your space energetically and socially because they can make you or break you.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family,
Hmm.
friends, clients, colleagues,
Hmm.
everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a curious optimist that is kind and thoughtful. I really try to do the right thing in whatever situation I'm facing, even if that's at my own expense, really. So I would say I'm just like a people first type of person that also really leans into my faith, as needed.
So before we get into the good business of how people can reach out, I got to know,
Hmm.
celebrating the history of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if you could get into a time machine and go back in the history of that city's timeline, where would
Hmm.
you go? What event would you love to have seen?
I would have loved to live here actually during the steel era, this like the Carnegie family
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
Again, just being an entrepreneur, it was like a tremendous time of growth and innovation. And Pittsburgh was like the center of commerce, at least for the steel industry at that time period. A lot of beautiful infrastructure was created from the library system here to the cultural district here is actually the second largest after Broadway's in New York City because of that time period, actually, right? There was so much money in the city and those families really invested in the infrastructure. So I think it would have been a really cool time to live
Yeah.
and yeah, and be in not so much in business with these people, but just to be a fly on the wall wherever they were conducting business.
Yeah. There is kind of a nice jazz connection between Pittsburgh and Kansas City. Mary Lou Williams was born
Okay.
and
Mm.
bred, and she came to Kansas City for a while, but it all began in Pittsburgh. So and we actually work quite a bit with Pittsburgh to kind of have that connection with the arts and music and all of that. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. I'll look
yeah.
her up.
Yeah, she was amazing. Totally. Like, I mean, it's like if she would have been a male, like
Yeah.
there would be no question as to how powerful her reign and jazz would have been. It was
Wow.
unreal. She was crazy talented.
What
Um,
when did she live?
she was back in the like 30s, 40s, 50s, kind of in that
Okay.
era, really in
Hmm.
the golden age. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And when she came to Kansas City, she was when Bird was here and all of the players, so it was a
Hmm.
big deal. So let's get to the good business. If anyone wants
Yes.
to hire you, reach out, see your work, any of the good business, where do they go?
Best place is to go to thebrandid.com. So that's TheBrandid.com. And we have a contact form there. It comes right to my inbox, so feel free to fill that out. I'm also pretty active on Facebook and LinkedIn, just under Rachel Gogos.
Okay, excellent. Rachel, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
You bet.